The Great Hall of the Galactic Covenant was filled with beings from 12 different worlds. They sat in a massive circle, each species in their own section. Looking down at the center, where a small group of humans stood waiting. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. Lights floated in the air like tiny suns, casting everything in a cold blue glow. Admiral Una stood at the front of the human group. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her stood Ambassador Tayan, a tall man with gentle features who had spent 30 years building friendships with alien species. Today, those friendships meant nothing. The High Arbiter, a creature that looked like a tower of flowing silver liquid, raised what passed for its hand. The hall fell silent. "We have heard all testimony regarding the human question," the Arbiter announced, its voice echoing from every direction at once. "The representatives will now vote." Una watched as, one by one, each species cast their decision. The Velith voted first. These tall, insect-like beings had been humanity's first contact 300 years ago. Humans had helped them cure a disease that was killing their children. They voted for exile. The Kreth were next. They were massive creatures with skin like stone and 4 powerful arms. Human engineers had built their communication network that connected 80 worlds. They voted for exile. The Marathi delegate stepped forward. His species looked almost human, except for their pale blue skin and lack of hair. Just 50 years ago, human soldiers had died defending Marathi colonies from space pirates. He voted for exile. Una felt Tayan's hand shake slightly beside her. She understood his pain. Every species voting against them had received something precious from Earth: medicine, technology, protection, food, and now they stood in judgment, calling humans dangerous and aggressive. When the final vote was cast, the result was clear. 11 species voted for exile. Only the Thesan, small furry beings who traded with everyone and belonged to no one, stayed silent. The High Arbiter spoke again. "By unanimous decision of the Covenant, Earth and all human territories are hereby exiled from galactic civilization. You have 90 standard cycles to remove all human presence from Covenant space. Your trade agreements are ended. Your colonies will be transferred to Covenant control. Your species is forbidden from entering our borders." Tayan started to step forward. His mouth opened to speak, to argue, to beg for reconsideration. 30 years of diplomatic work was dying in front of him. Surely there was something he could say. But Una grabbed his arm and squeezed hard. "No," she whispered. "We do not beg." He looked at her with pain in his eyes. "Una, we can do nothing," she said quietly. "They've made their choice. Now we will make ours." She turned to face the assembled species one final time. Every eye, every sensor, every organ of perception in that great hall was focused on her. They expected anger. They expected threats. They expected humans to act exactly as they had been portrayed: aggressive, emotional, dangerous. Una simply bowed her head slightly in acknowledgement. "The human delegation thanks the Covenant for its time," she said, her voice completely calm. "We will comply with your decision." Then she turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. The other human delegates followed her without a word. The Velith High Speaker leaned toward the Kreth representative. "That is all? No protest?" The Kreth made a rumbling sound of confusion. Perhaps they did not understand the judgment. They understood, the Marathi delegate said, watching the humans leave. Something cold moved through his chest. He had expected fire and fury. This quiet acceptance was somehow worse. Outside the Great Hall, the human delegation walked through corridors made of living crystal. Other species moved aside as they passed, some with fear in their eyes, others with satisfaction. Taehyun caught up to Yuna. What do we do now? Exactly what we said. We leave. But the colonies, the research stations, the trade, gone. Yuna did not slow her pace. All of it. We take what is ours and we go home. Earth cannot survive alone. We need the Covenant's resources, their markets. Yuna stopped so suddenly that Taehyun almost walked into her. She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw something burning in her eyes. Do we? She asked. Humanity existed for 200,000 years before we ever met these species. We built civilizations. We crossed oceans. We split the atom. We reached our own moon before any of them knew we existed. She leaned closer. We did not need them then. We do not need them now. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. What about all the things we gave them? The technology, the medicine, They wanted us gone, Yuna said, turning to continue walking. They will learn what that means. Behind them, in the Great Hall, the Covenant representatives celebrated their decision. The dangerous humans would finally be contained. The galaxy would be safe. They congratulated each other on their wisdom and courage. None of them noticed the Thesan merchant in the corner, quietly recording everything. None of them saw him send an encrypted message toward Earth. And none of them understood that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history, back on the transport ship. Yuna stood at the window and watched the Covenant station grow smaller. Taehyun came to stand beside her. Do you think they will regret this? He asked why Yuna thought about all the human doctors working in alien hospitals, all the human engineers keeping alien technology running, all the human farmers growing food on alien worlds. She thought about the medicines humanity had shared freely, the knowledge given without payment, the hands extended in friendship to species who had nothing to offer in return. Yes, she said finally. They will regret this very much. The ship turned toward Seoul, toward home, toward a future that no one in the galaxy could predict. Humanity had been told to leave, and humans do not wait to be told twice. The news of Earth's exile spread across 300 worlds in a matter of hours. On every planet and every station, beings of a dozen species stopped what they were doing to hear the announcement. The dangerous humans were finally being dealt with. The galaxy celebrated dawn, but the celebration did not last long. On Velith Prime, the capital world of the insect-like Velith, High Speaker Thornax woke to an urgent message. The human hospital in the southern district had closed overnight. The doctors were gone. The medicine stores were empty. Even the beds had been removed. Where did they go? Thornax demanded of his aide. High Speaker. All of them. They left a note thanking us for 3 centuries of cooperation and wishing us well in our future. Thornax felt his wings twitch with anxiety. But the patients, still there. Without doctors. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out again and again. Human teachers in Kreth schools packed their belongings and left. Human engineers at Marathi power plants handed over their tools and walked away. Human farmers on a dozen agricultural worlds simply stopped working. They did not argue. They did not protest. They simply left. On Earth, Secretary General Minji stood before the World Council in New Geneva. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and a face that showed both kindness and iron will. Billions watched her speech on screens across the planet. The Galactic Covenant has asked us to leave their space, she said, her voice steady and clear. We will honor their request. Every human citizen currently in Covenant territory will return home within the given time. Every piece of human technology, every piece of human knowledge, every human resource will be withdrawn. She paused, letting her words sink in. We shared freely with the galaxy for 300 years. We asked for nothing in return except friendship and respect. They have shown us what our friendship was worth to them. Her eyes hardened. So be it. Within days, massive transport ships began arriving at human colonies throughout Covenant space. Families who had lived on alien worlds for generations packed their belongings. Children said goodbye to alien friends they would never see again. Scientists shut down research that would have benefited the entire galaxy. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, a human foreman named Junsu gathered his crew for one last meeting. They had worked alongside Kreth miners for 20 years, teaching them techniques that increase production by 300%. "We are leaving tomorrow," Junsu announced. "Take all your personal items. Take all the equipment we brought. Leave nothing behind." A Kreth worker named Groth stepped forward. "But the deep mines will collapse without your support beams. Our people do not know how to maintain them." Junsu looked at his old friend with sad eyes. "Then I suggest you learn quickly. Teach us before you go. Please." For a moment, Junsu was tempted. He had worked with Groth for 2 decades. They had saved each other's lives more than once. But then he remembered the vote. He remembered that every Kreth representative had chosen exile. "Your leaders decided they no longer want our help," Junsu said quietly. "We will respect their decision." He turned and walked away. Behind him, Groth stood in silence, finally understanding what exile truly meant. On Marathi Prime, the situation was even worse. Human genetic engineers had spent 50 years developing grain that could grow in Marathi soil. Without human supervision, the seed production facilities shut down. The Marathi had the plants, but they did not have the knowledge to grow more. Ambassador Soren of the Marathi sent an urgent message to Earth. Surely this was a misunderstanding. Surely humans would not let millions starve over a political disagreement. The response came within an hour. Signed by Secretary General Minji herself. The Marathi voted to exile Earth from galactic civilization. This means all ties between our peoples are severed. We have no trade agreements, no aid programs, and no diplomatic relations. If Marathi wishes to establish new relations with Earth, they are welcome to apply through standard channels. Current wait time for new diplomatic applications is approximately 12 years. Soren read the message 3 times before he believed it. Then he buried his face in his hands. The humans were not fighting back. They were not threatening revenge. They were simply doing exactly what they had been asked to do. And that was so much worse. In the neutral trading station of Desser, merchants watched the human exodus with growing concern. A Thesan trader named Biu had dealt with humans for most of her life. She understood them better than most aliens. "They are not coming back," she told her fellow traders. "Of course they will," a Velith merchant replied. "They need us. Their economy depends on galactic trade." Biu shook her small furry head. "You do not understand humans. They came to the stars looking for friends. They shared everything they had because they wanted to help. They believed the galaxy would accept them." She looked toward the window, where human ships were passing on their way to Sol. The Covenant showed them they were wrong. Humans do not repeat mistakes. They cannot survive alone. Perhaps not. Biu's ears flattened against her head. But I think the more important question is whether we can survive without them. The Velith merchant laughed. The galaxy existed for millions of years before humans left their planet. "We will be fine." Biu said nothing, but she began moving her most valuable goods to a secure location. And she started stockpiling human medicines and technology just in case. On the 89th day of the 90-day deadline, the last human ship left Covenant space. Admiral Yuna watched from her command vessel as the border beacons flashed behind them. "All human citizens are accounted for," her officer Do-hyun reported. "All assets have been recovered. All technology has been removed or destroyed." "Good." Yuna turned away from the window. Set the border beacons to automatic response only. No human ship enters Covenant space. No Covenant ship enters human space. What if they want to talk? Una thought of all the species who had voted against humanity. She thought of the centuries of help that had been repaid with exile. She thought of the children who had been torn from homes they loved because aliens feared them. They've made their feelings clear, she said. We will respect their wishes. The border closed behind them, and for the first time in 300 years, humanity was alone. 6 months after the exile, the first crisis began. On Marathi Prime, farmers noticed something wrong with their grain. The leaves were turning brown at the edges. The seeds were not forming properly. Within weeks, the problem had spread to 7 agricultural worlds. It is the blight, the chief scientist announced to the Marathi Council. The same disease that destroyed our crops 300 years ago. The one the humans cured. Ambassador Soren stood up from his seat. We have the cure. They gave it to us. They gave us the medicine, yes. But the medicine is gone. We used it all. And we do not know how to make more. Soren felt cold fear in his stomach. Then, we will buy more from them. How? We have no trade with Earth, no diplomatic relations. Our messages are not even being answered. The council fell into chaos. 300 years ago, the blight had killed half the Marathi population. Without the human cure, history would repeat itself. Soren gathered a delegation and traveled to the Sol System border. They were met by a single human patrol ship, commanded by a woman named Yunbi. She received them politely in a small meeting room with gray walls and no decorations. We come in peace, Soren began. We wish to discuss an emergency trade agreement. Yunbi nodded. I will record your request and forward it to Earth. No, you do not understand. Millions of my people will die. We need the medicine now. I understand completely, Yunbi said, her face showing no emotion. However, Earth and Marathi have no diplomatic relations. The exile decree clearly stated that all ties between humanity and the Covenant are severed. We are simply following the rules your government established. But people will starve. Yes, Yunbi's voice remained calm. They will. Your government should have considered that possibility before voting for exile. Soren wanted to scream. He wanted to grab this cold human and shake her until she understood. But he looked into her eyes and saw something that stopped him. It was not cruelty. It was not revenge. It was complete and absolute indifference. The humans simply did not care anymore. The Marathi delegation returned home empty-handed. Within a year, the blight had spread to every agricultural world in their territory. 40% of their food supply was destroyed. People began to starve, but the Marathi were not alone in their suffering. On Kreth Prime, the communication network began to fail. Strange errors appeared in transmissions. Connections dropped without warning. Engineers worked day and night to find the problem, but nothing helped. A young Kreth technician named Vorn finally discovered the truth. She brought her findings to the Council of Stone, where the greatest Kreth leaders gathered. The entire network was built by humans, she explained. Every critical component, every repair protocol, every maintenance procedure. They designed it, they installed it, and they kept it running for 200 years. We can learn to maintain it ourselves, a council member said. No, honored elder. We cannot. The technology is beyond our understanding. It would take us 50 years just to learn the basic principles. And the network will fail completely within 3 years. The council was silent. The Kreth Empire stretched across 80 worlds. Without faster-than-light communication, they would be reduced to waiting years for messages to travel between stars. Send a request to Earth, the council leader finally said. Ask them for help. We already did, honored elder. They said they would add our request to the queue. Current estimated wait time is 15 years. Meanwhile, on Velith Prime, the medical system was collapsing. Human doctors had treated Velith patients for 3 centuries. Human researchers had developed medicines specifically for Velith biology. Human hospitals had trained every Velith medical professional. Now all of that was gone. High Speaker Thornax visited a hospital in the capital city. The corridors were packed with sick and dying Velith. The few doctors who remained worked without rest, but it was not enough. "We do not know how to treat most of these conditions," the hospital director told Thornax. "The humans always handled the difficult cases. We never learned. We never needed to. Why not? Why did we not learn?" The director looked at the ground. "Because they were always here to help us. We thought they would always be here." Thornax walked through the hospital, seeing suffering he had not imagined possible. A disease that humans had cured 200 years ago was killing Velith by the thousands. They had the medicine, but the supply was limited. Soon it would run out. And then the dying would truly begin. In the neutral trading station of Desser, the Thesan merchant Bu watched the news from across the galaxy. Every day brought new reports of crisis. The Moradi were starving. The Kreth were losing their network. The Velith were dying of preventable diseases. A Covenant official approached her stall. "You trade with humans. Can you arrange contact?" Bu shook her head. "The humans do not leave Sol System anymore. They trade only with Thasans and only through the border station. Then buy medicine from them for us. We will pay anything. They will not sell medicine to anyone who voted for exile." They were very clear about this. The official's face twisted with anger. "This is revenge. This is punishment." "No," Bu said quietly. "This is exactly what you asked for. You wanted the humans gone. They are gone. You wanted no contact with Earth. There is no contact. They are simply respecting the terms of their exile. But surely they cannot want people to die." Bu remembered a human traitor she had known for years. He had told her about the vote, about how humanity had felt watching every species they had helped turn against them. "I think," she said slowly, "that humans have learned not to care about what happens to people who do not care about them." The official stormed away. But Bu noticed others listening. Other merchants. Other traders. Others who were beginning to understand that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake. And in the Sol System, humanity continued building. New ships were being constructed. New technologies were being developed. New plans were being made. They had been told they were not wanted. So they had decided to want something else. Something the galaxy could not take from them. Something far away. From the species who had rejected their friendship. The stars of the Andromeda galaxy burned brightly in Earth's telescopes. And for the first time in history, humans began to dream of leaving the Milky Way forever. 5 years passed since the exile vote. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. The Moradi famine, as historians would call it, killed 12 million people before it ended. The survivors learned to grow new crops, but their population never recovered. Their once proud civilization became a shadow of what it had been. The Kreth. Communication collapse divided their empire into isolated fragments. Worlds that had once spoken to each other in seconds now waited years for messages. Some colonies simply stopped responding. No one knew if they were dead or alive. The Velith medical crisis claimed the lives of an entire generation. Diseases that humans had controlled spread without mercy. Hospitals became places of death rather than healing. The Velith population fell by 30%. And through it all, Earth remained silent. Not hostile. Not threatening. Just silent. On Nesser Prime, a young Kreth historian named Thelvos had dedicated his life to understanding what had happened. He collected every piece of information about humanity he could find. He interviewed traders who had dealt with humans. He studied ancient recordings of human broadcasts. One day, he presented his findings to a nearly empty lecture hall. Only a few students came to hear about humanity anymore. Most people preferred not to think about the species they had exiled. "We made a fundamental error in understanding humans," Thalvos began. "We saw their generosity as weakness. We interpreted their desire for friendship as desperation. We believed they needed our acceptance more than we needed their help." He projected images on the wall. Human doctors treating alien patients. Human engineers building alien machines. Human teachers in alien schools. For 300 years, humans gave freely to the galaxy. They shared their medicine, their technology, their knowledge. They asked for almost nothing in return. Just acceptance. Just friendship. Thalvos paused, looking at his small audience. "We gave them exile instead." He showed the voting records from that final day. 11 species voting against humanity. 11 species who had all received human help at some point. I have interviewed many officials who participated in that vote. Do you know what most of them say? They say they thought humans were bluffing. They thought humanity would protest, negotiate, offer more concessions. They never believed humans would actually leave. A student raised her hand. "Why did they leave so quickly?" Thalvos smiled sadly. "Because humans do not beg." They had spent 3 centuries trying to prove they belonged in the galaxy. They built, they healed, they protected. And in the end, we told them it was not enough. So they stopped trying. "But they must want to come back," another student said. "Surely they miss the galaxy." I thought so too. So I obtained permission to visit the human border station. I wanted to see for myself what they were doing. The room fell silent. No one from the Covenant had been allowed near human space in 5 years. Thalvos projected new images. Massive ships under construction. Orbital stations of incredible size. Technology that made Covenant achievements look primitive. "They are building generation ships," he said. "Hundreds of them. Each one capable of carrying millions of humans across the void between galaxies. They are leaving the Milky Way entirely." The students gasped. Intergalactic travel was considered impossible. The distances were too vast. The journey would take thousands of years. "Humans do not believe in impossible," Thalvos continued. "They believe in patience. They believe in determination. And most importantly, they believe in themselves." He turned off the projections. "We exiled them from our galaxy. So they decided to find a new one." In the back of the lecture hall, an old Velith sat in shadow. He wore simple clothes and kept his face hidden. But Thalvos recognized him anyway. It was Ambassador Voran, who had been the loudest voice calling for human exile. He had argued that humans were a threat to galactic peace. He had convinced others to vote against them. Now his species was dying of diseases humans could have cured. After the lecture, Voran approached Thalvos. His eyes were wet with tears. "Is there nothing we can do?" he asked. "No way to make them return?" Thalvos looked at the old ambassador with something between pity and contempt. "They offered us everything," he said. "Friendship, knowledge, help. They asked only to be accepted as equals. We refused them. We humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy. We took 3 centuries of generosity and threw it in their faces." Voran lowered his head. "We were afraid of them." "Yes, you were afraid of the one species that wanted to be your friend. And now you are surrounded by species who want to be your enemies. And the friends you rejected are leaving forever." Voran was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that haunted everyone who had voted for exile. "Do they hate us?" Thalvos thought about the human border officer he had met. She had been polite and professional. She had answered all his questions. But there had been nothing in her eyes. No anger, no resentment. No satisfaction at the Covenant's suffering. Nothing at all. No, Thelvo said finally. I do not think they hate us. I think they have simply forgotten we exist. Vorin made a sound like breaking glass. It was the Velith way of crying. That is worse, he whispered. That is so much worse. Thelvos nodded. Yes, it is. He left the old ambassador standing alone in the empty lecture hall, weeping for a future that would never come. On Earth, Secretary General Minji had retired years ago, but she still watched the construction of the Exodus fleet from her home in New Geneva. Her successor, a man named Yumu, visited her sometimes. Today he brought news from the border. The Covenant is falling apart, he told her. The Moradi and Kreth are at war again. The Velith are in complete isolation. The alliance that exiled us is destroying itself. Minji looked at the ships rising into the sky. And what do our people say? Some want to go back. They say we could rule the galaxy now. Take revenge for what was done to us. And the others? Hyunwoo smiled. The others say we have better things to do. New stars to explore. New worlds to build. New civilizations to create. Minji nodded slowly. And what do you say, Secretary General? Hyunwoo looked at the Exodus fleet, at the dream of a new beginning far from old hatreds. I say the galaxy made its choice. Now we make ours. Minji smiled for the first time in years. Good answer. 12 years after the exile vote, the Galactic Covenant officially died. There was no final meeting. No formal dissolution. The alliance simply stopped existing. The communication networks had failed completely. The trade routes were empty. The species that had once united against humanity now fought each other for the scraps of a dying civilization. The Moradi-Kreth border wars consumed 3 star systems. Billions died in fighting over resources that humans had once provided freely. The Velith retreated to their homeworld and stopped communicating with anyone. Rumors said plague had finally overwhelmed them. No one knew for certain. The great hall where humans had been exiled stood empty now. The floating lights had gone dark. The crystal walls were cracked and dusty. Occasionally, small creatures scurried across the floor where ambassadors had once walked. On Messer Prime, the neutral traders tried to maintain some order. But even they were struggling. Without human technology to repair their ships, without human medicine to treat their sick, without human knowledge to solve their problems, the galaxy was slowly falling apart. Merchant Bu, now old and gray, watched the news from her small shop. Her daughter Milan sat beside her. They are really leaving, Milan said. Pointing at the screen, the broadcast showed the human Exodus fleet, 200 massive ships, each one carrying 15 million people. They hung in space like a swarm of silver giants, their engines glowing with power that no other species could match. They have been building for 10 years, Bu said. Every resource they had went into those ships. Every mind, every hand, every credit. They are taking 3 billion humans to the Andromeda Galaxy. Will they ever come back? Bu shook her head slowly. The journey will take 12,000 years. By the time they arrive, everyone alive today will be dust. By the time they could return, the sun will have changed. Nothing they knew will remain. Milan was quiet for a moment. Do you think they will remember us? Oh, yes. Humans never forget. They will remember how the galaxy welcomed them with curiosity. They will remember how they made friends and built bridges and healed the sick. They will remember 300 years of trying to belong. Bu's voice grew soft. And they will remember how we thanked them with exile. They will tell their children and their children's children for 12,000 years. The story of how the galaxy rejected humanity's friendship. It will become legend. A warning. A reminder. On the lead ship of the Exodus fleet, Fleet Commander Yuna stood on the observation deck. She was old now, her hair completely white, her face lined with decades of duty. But her eyes were still sharp. Behind her stood the next generation of human leadership. Young officers who had never known the galaxy beyond. So, young scientists who had spent their lives preparing for a journey they would never complete. Young dreamers who believed in a future beyond the stars. Communications Officer Do-hyun approached her. He had served with Yuna since the beginning. He had watched her lead humanity through the darkest years. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from Desser Prime. Yuna did not turn from the window. What do they want? It is addressed to the human government. From the last members of the Galactic Covenant. They are asking for help. The observation deck fell silent. Everyone remembered the exile. Everyone remembered the vote. What kind of help? Yuna asked. Everything. Medicine. Technology. Food. They say the galaxy is dying. They say only humans can save them. They are asking us to come back. Yuna finally turned from the window. She looked at the young officers around her. Children who had grown up in exile. Children who had never known the rejection their parents had suffered. What do you think we should do? She asked them. A young woman named Hana stepped forward. She was Yuna's chosen successor, brilliant and compassionate. She would lead the Exodus fleet when Yuna was gone. We could go back, Hana said slowly. We have the power now. We could rebuild the galaxy. Make them need us so much they could never exile us again. And? Hana was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. And we would be going back to people who only want us because they need something from us. Not because they respect us. Not because they see us as equals. Just because they are desperate. She looked at the stars ahead. We deserve better than that. Yuna smiled. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. It contained the original exile decree, the document that had cast humanity out of the galaxy. She had carried it for 12 years. Yes, she said. We do. She handed the chip to Do-hyun. Send an acknowledgement. Tell them we have received their message. Tell them we wish them well in their future. Tell them we hope they find peace. That is all? That is all. Then close the communication channel permanently. Do-hyun nodded and left to carry out her orders. Yuna walked to the great window. Beyond it, the Milky Way was already growing smaller. Ahead, invisible in the void, the Andromeda Galaxy waited. Commander, Hana said softly. Do you regret it? Leaving? Yuna thought about Earth, growing distant behind them. She thought about the blue oceans and green forests and billions of humans who had chosen to stay. Earth would continue. Humanity would remain in the Milky Way. This was not an ending dot, it was a beginning. No, she said. The galaxy taught us an important lesson. They taught us that friendship given freely is not valued. They taught us that generosity is mistaken for weakness. They taught us that no matter how much we give, some people will always see us as outsiders. She turned to face her crew. So we will go somewhere new. We will build our own civilizations among stars no one has touched. And when we meet new species, we will remember the lesson the Covenant taught us. We will be kind, but we will not be foolish. We will share, but we will not give everything away. We will offer friendship, but we will not beg for acceptance. The engines hummed as the Exodus fleet began to accelerate. Behind them, the Milky Way faded to just another smear of light among billions dot on Desser Prime. Bu watched the human ships disappear from sensors. The last trace of humanity in the local galaxy, gone forever. Beside her, Milin wept. They really left us, she whispered. They really left. Bu put her arm around her daughter. No, child. We left them. 12 years ago. They are just now finishing the journey. In the Great Hall on Desser Prime, A single light flickered to life. An old automated system, still running after years of neglect. It projected the words of the exile decree one final time. Earth is hereby exiled. The words hung in the empty air. Then the projector sparked and died, and the hall was dark again. Outside, the stars continued to burn. But they seemed somehow emptier now, somehow colder. The galaxy had made its choice, and humanity had made theirs. Some doors, once closed, can never be opened again, and some exiles last forever.